The warm glow of the setting sun cast long shadows across the quiet neighborhood. Emily sat on the porch swing, flipping through an old family album. The familiar faces of her parents, her childhood smiles frozen in time, filled the pages. Then, a loose photograph slipped out, fluttering to the ground. She bent down to pick it up, her fingers hesitating as she turned it over. The image made her stomach tighten, a burned-down house, its charred remains barely standing. Scribbled on the back was a date she recognized, her birthday. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She had heard the story countless times before. Her parents had always told her she survived a terrible fire when she was a baby. That she was miraculously rescued from the flames. But this picture, this wreckage, stirred something deep within her. Something felt off. The house didn't resemble the one she had grown up in. The details in the story had always been vague, but she never questioned them. Until now. She grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling as she typed into the search bar. House fire, infant survivor, missing records. The results loaded, and her breath caught in her throat. Mysterious house fire leaves 2 dead, infant presumed deceased. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as she clicked on the article. The details unfolded before her eyes. A couple, tragically killed in a suspicious fire. Their baby, never found. The official report stated that the remains of the infant were never recovered. But if that was true, then who was she? The wind howled through the open attic window as dust swirled around Emily's feet. Boxes stacked high, their labels faded with time. Her parents never let her up here. But now, standing in the dim glow of her flashlight, she was determined to uncover the truth. She rummaged through old trunks, pushing aside forgotten relics. Then, she saw it, a small wooden chest, locked with a rusted latch. Her heart pounded as she knelt before it. She pried at the lock, desperation fueling her movements. With a sharp crack, the latch snapped open. The lid creaked as she lifted it. Inside, yellowed documents were stacked neatly, along with a bundle of letters tied together with a frayed ribbon. She reached for the top paper. Her breath caught as she read the name at the top. It wasn't hers, or at least, not the name she had always known. Olivia Warren. Her hands trembled as she flipped through birth records, adoption papers, none of them with her parents' names. The newspaper clipping at the bottom made her stomach twist. It was the same article she had found online. Infant presumed dead in suspicious fire. The fire that killed her biological parents. A noise behind her made her jump. She spun around, her breath caught in her throat. The attic door stood slightly ajar, the dim hallway light spilling in. Had someone been watching, listening? She quickly shoved the documents back into the chest and covered it with an old blanket. Her heart pounded as she stepped toward the door, her ears straining for any sound. The house was silent, but something felt different. Dinner was a quiet affair. Her parents sat across from her, their eyes flicking to one another when they thought she wasn't looking. Emily pushed her food around her plate, her appetite gone. She wanted answers. She set down her fork. "Why did you tell me I survived a fire?" Lisa and Mark froze. A long silence stretched between them. We wanted to protect you," Lisa finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily's grip tightened on the edge of the table. "From what?" Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. "The people who started that fire, they were looking for you." Her blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Lisa swallowed hard. "Your parents didn't just die in that fire, Emily. They were murdered." Her entire world tilted. Her hands shook as she pushed back her chair, standing too quickly. "That doesn't make sense. Why would someone want to kill them?" Mark's expression darkened. "Because they had something that someone else wanted." Emily felt dizzy. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. "Who?" Before Mark could answer, a slow, deliberate knock echoed through the house. Everyone froze. 3 steady knocks. Not rushed, not hesitant, purposeful. Lisa's breath hitched. Mark stood slowly, his jaw clenched. Emily's pulse thundered as he walked to the door, glancing through the peephole. His entire body stiffened. He turned back to them, his voice a low warning. "Go upstairs, now." Lisa grabbed Emily's wrist, but she resisted. "Who is it?" she whispered. Mark didn't answer. Instead, he took a deep breath and opened the door. A man stood on the porch, his features sharp, his eyes cold. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile. His gaze flicked past Mark, landing directly on Emily. "I've been looking for you," he said, his voice smooth, almost amused. Lisa's grip tightened. Emily felt her knees weaken. Mark stepped in front of them. "You need to leave." The man chuckled. "Oh, Mark, you always were stubborn." Mark's hands curled into fists. "I said, leave." The man ignored him, his eyes locked on Emily. "Do you know who you really are?" Emily's stomach twisted. "Who are you?" The man tilted his head. "I'm the man who should have found you all those years ago." Mark lunged, slamming the door in his face. Lisa was already pulling Emily toward the stairs. Then, the window shattered. Glass rained down as Lisa screamed. Mark grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter. Emily's heart pounded as the man climbed through the broken window, his expression unfazed. "You can't run from the truth forever," he said, stepping closer. "I will finish what was started." Emily's body moved before her mind could catch up. She grabbed a heavy book from the table and hurled it at him. It barely slowed him down. Then, the sirens wailed. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. The man cursed under his breath, stepping back. "This isn't over," he said, his voice dripping with promise. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night. The police stormed in moments later, their guns drawn. Lisa collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Mark paced the room, his jaw clenched. Emily stood frozen, her mind racing. Everything she had ever known was a lie. Her parents weren't her parents. She wasn't who she thought she was. And whoever had killed her real family, was still out there. The flashing lights outside painted the walls in harsh red and blue streaks. Emily sat on the couch, her hands trembling as an officer asked her questions. Lisa and Mark stood nearby, their faces pale and drawn. The man had disappeared into the darkness, but his words lingered like a ghost in the air. "This isn't over." Emily's mind raced. Who was he? How did he know her? And if he had been looking for her all these years, what stopped him until now? "Miss, can you describe the intruder?" the officer asked. She swallowed hard. "Tall, maybe 6 feet. Dark hair, cold eyes. He acted like he knew me." Lisa's breath hitched. Mark placed a firm hand on her shoulder, as if grounding her. "Did he take anything, leave anything behind?" Emily shook her head, but then she remembered the attic. The chest, the papers, her stomach twisted. Had he seen them? Did he already know what she had found? The officer finished his notes and nodded. "We'll send patrols through the neighborhood. If you see anything suspicious, call immediately." Mark walked them to the door, locking it tightly once they left. The house felt too quiet, too fragile. Lisa turned to Emily, her eyes glassy. "You need to go." Emily's head snapped up. "What?" Mark ran a hand through his hair. "It's not safe here, Emily. If he found us, he'll come back." Emily's pulse pounded. "So what? I just run. You're asking me to leave the only home I've ever known." Lisa stepped forward, gripping Emily's hands. "We love you, but we can't protect you from him." Emily pulled away. "You still haven't told me who he is. Why is he after me? What do you know that I don't?" Lisa's shoulders sagged. "It's not what we know," she whispered. "It's what we fear." Mark exhaled sharply. "Pack a bag. We'll take you somewhere safe." Emily clenched her fists. "I'm not running." Mark's gaze hardened. "You don't have a choice." The road stretched long and dark ahead of them. The car's headlights cut through the misty night as Mark drove in silence. Lisa sat beside him, clutching a worn envelope in her lap. Emily sat in the back, arms crossed, her mind a storm of thoughts. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. Lisa hesitated. "To someone who can help." Emily frowned. "Who?" Mark tightened his grip on the wheel. "Someone who knew your real parents." Her heart skipped a beat. "They're alive." Lisa shook her head. "No, but they had friends. People who knew the truth about what happened." Emily's stomach churned. "And you never thought to tell me this before." Lisa looked back at her, eyes filled with sorrow. "We were trying to protect you." Emily let out a hollow laugh. "Yeah, how well did that work out?" No one spoke after that. They pulled up to an old motel on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered weakly, buzzing in the still air. Mark shut off the engine. "We stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we keep moving." Lisa handed Emily the envelope. "This was left with you the night we found you." Emily's fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter, the ink faded but legible. "If you're reading this, it means they found you. It means you're in danger." Her breath caught. "You were never supposed to survive that fire. But now that you have, they won't stop looking." Emily's hands shook. "Who wrote this?" Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. "Your mother." A sudden knock made them all jump. Emily's breath hitched. Lisa clutched her arm. Mark pulled out the small handgun he always kept hidden in the glove compartment. Another knock. Mark crept to the door. "Who is it?" Silence. Then, a voice, Low, steady. Let me in. We don't have much time. Emily's heart pounded. Mark hesitated, then unlocked the door. A man in his late 50s stepped inside, his coat damp from the night air. His eyes landed on Emily. You look just like her. Emily's throat tightened. Like who? The man exhaled. Your mother. Tears burned behind her eyes. Who are you? An old friend. His gaze darkened. And the only one who can help you survive what's coming. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Who's after me? The man's expression turned grave. The same people who killed your parents. Emily's pulse roared in her ears. Why? The man hesitated, then reached into his coat. He pulled out a small, weathered notebook. Because of what your father knew. And what they think you might remember. Emily swallowed hard. I don't remember anything. The man nodded. That's what they're counting on. But it won't save you. Lisa sat down, hands trembling. Who is he? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. The man sighed. His name is Victor Hale. He's been hunting you since the night of the fire. Emily's stomach turned. Why? The man flipped open the notebook, revealing pages filled with scribbled notes, sketches, symbols Emily didn't recognize. Because your father had proof. And Victor would do anything to keep it buried. Emily's hands balled into fists. Then we find it first. Mark frowned. You don't understand who you're up against. Emily's jaw tightened. I don't care. I won't spend my life running. The man studied her for a long moment. Then, he slid the notebook across the table. Then you better be ready. Because once you start looking for the truth, they'll come for you. Emily took the notebook, the weight of it sinking deep into her chest. She had spent her whole life believing a lie. Now, she was ready for the truth. Even if it destroyed her.